You ready for me, Sophia?
Yep, whenever you want to start.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for joining us as we come together to celebrate Rare Disease Day and our respective rare disease journeys. Please remember to mute your microphones. You may post questions in the chat, and we will have time for discussions and additional questions for the speakers during our last half hour, which is our happy hour chat time. We will start with host introductions, a policy update, lawmaker remarks, and our 3 rare stories, and then we'll close the night with the chat that I just mentioned. My name is Mary Wooten, and I am co-ambassador for New York RAN. I'm also the parent and caregiver for 2 children who have a combined 5 rare diseases, and I have 1 rare disease and another one that's debatable. I'm also on staff and an ambassador for member organization, the Oli Foundation. I apologize during the time that I'm speaking. If you hear some noise, I have 3 children and a very noisy dog with me tonight. I would now like to invite my co-ambassador, Sophia, to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name's Sophia. I am a genetic counseling student, and that's kind of my connection to rare. I study and work with a lot of people with rare disorders, and I also got involved with rare at my undergrad with the Students for Rare chapter program. And then I wanted to continue being involved, and I got into the Rare Action Network, and have been working with Mary and Jess ever since. And it's been really great. Yeah, thanks for coming tonight. We're really excited for what we have for you. And I'm going to pass it over to Jess to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica. I'm the community engagement liaison, and I also work with Sophia and Mary. I got involved with New York Rare Action Network in 2020. So this will actually be my 2nd Rare Disease Day, and I'm really happy to see all of you guys. And yeah, we can get started.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to give a policy update and just spend a couple minutes on that, please. I'd like to speak first about the Rare Disease Advisory Council and give an update on that. The Rare Disease Advisory Council is an advisory body providing a platform for the rare community to have a stronger voice in state government. RDACs address the needs of the rare patients and families by giving stakeholders an opportunity to make recommendations to state leaders on critical issues, including the need for increased awareness, diagnostic tools, and access to affordable treatments and cures. Assemblymember Paulin and Senator Rivera sponsored Assembly Bill 5762 and Senate Bill 4497 to establish a Rare Disease Advisory Council in 2019. This important legislation was signed into law in 2020 because of a chapter amendment that turned the council into a work group. Thanks to the hard work and dedication of the New York State Department of Health, Assemblymember Paulin and Senator Rivera, and rare disease advocates throughout our state, we are pleased to share that the New York Rare Disease Work Group is in the implementation process. Currently, the New York State Department of Health is putting together and vetting a package of 20 individuals that the department has selected to sit on the work group. Once the vetting process is complete, the individuals who have been selected to serve on the work group will be notified, and their first meeting will be scheduled. Updates will be announced. Assemblymember McDonald and Senator Rivera have once again sponsored and introduced the Rare Disease Day resolutions with almost 50 co-sponsors this year. We will share a picture of the resolution on social media when we receive our copy for you all to see. We would like to thank you, Assemblymember McDonald and Senator Rivera, for your continued support throughout the years. Sophia, has Assemblymember McDonald joined us yet?
I have not seen him, but
okay,
he can.
That's fine. Assemblymember McDonald is in the 108th district. we're hoping that he'll be able to join us tonight to say a couple words. But in the meantime, we do have a video from Senator Rivera that he has sent to share with everyone.
Please let me know if you can't hear it well, or I'm going to start it in a second.
Hello, this is State Senator Gustavo Rivera from the 33rd District in the Northwest Bronx and Chair of the Health Committee in the Senate. And I'm glad to join you today as we commemorate this year's Rare Disease Awareness Day in New York State. I want to recognize the National Organization for Rare Disorders, Rare Action Network, and Rare Disease Advocates for the work that you do year after year. It is our responsibility to provide the many New Yorkers suffering from rare diseases necessary support network. Affected New Yorkers and their families often face inequitable access to diagnosis, affordable treatment, and care. And when you consider that rare diseases and conditions affect 25 to 30 million Americans, which means 1 out of 10 individuals are affected by them, you realize that this community is not so rare after all. So we must encourage research and treatment innovation to better understand these diseases and potentially find treatments and ultimately cures. We must increase public awareness of rare diseases and work across all levels of government to support those who suffer from them and their families and their caregivers. So I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you in the years ahead to do just this. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you so much to Senator Rivera for sending us that video. We really appreciated it. And thank you for his kind words. And now I would like to introduce Ashley, who is one of our speakers for tonight. Ashley is a rare patient herself, as well as a rare advocate. So we all welcome her. And thank you so much, Ashley, for talking to us tonight. We're excited to hear what you have to say.
Thank you all for inviting me to be here as a speaker tonight. I just want to say thank you to all of the ambassadors and advocates and everyone here. I want to start off with this slide right here, which is a saying that we talk about at our conferences. And it's, if you walk in the footsteps of a stranger, you'll learn things you never knew you never knew. Next slide. When I was born, I had white hair, and it was determined by the doctor that I had albinism. They told my parents that I was legally blind and that I was not going to be able to see very well. When I was about a year old, I started to try to walk, and they noticed bruises on my shins. My mother tried to get me tested for a bleeding disorder, and no one gave her the proper answers. She eventually called the author of a book that she was reading on albinism. They sent my blood to that doctor, and he diagnosed Hermanski Podlock syndrome. A little while later, when I was about 2 years old, I was asleep in my crib, and my parents heard me whimper, and they found that I was hemorrhaging. It turned out that I was hemorrhaging from a GI bleed that seemed to be happening very badly. They brought me to the emergency room. I was in the hospital for 3 months. We were very thankful to meet a wonderful gastroenterologist that helped us. But because of the GI bleed, I had developed a traumatic brain injury. The bleeding was not stopped fast enough, and I lost oxygen to the brain. I kept having these bleeds, spent a lot of time in the hospital over the years. I would go in during one season and come out the next. Because of the GI bleed and the traumatic brain injury, I had a lot that I needed to catch up on cognitively and developmentally. Next slide. Hermanski-Podlock syndrome is a genetic disorder. It is autosomal recessive. It is a single gene disorder, but there are 11 different genes. There is a founder's effect in Puerto Rico. This is because the island is surrounded by water. There is a large prevalence of people with HPS on the island. It can be diagnosed by looking at a platelet underneath an electron microscope. So a normal platelet looks like a chocolate chip cookie. Those chips are what burst and open and help the platelets clot and clump together. In Hermanski Podlock syndrome, there are no chips. There are no compartments to hold chemicals, so they look like butter cookies. We have the right number of platelets, but they do not work properly. HPS is characterized by albinism, legal blindness, this platelet bleeding disorder, which is seen in bruising, and Crohn's-like colitis that gave me a lot of challenges. It progresses to involve pulmonary fibrosis, that is the scarring of the lungs. The lung disease is what we die of. It is underdiagnosed. We are about up to a little more over 1,000 members, so our community is small. Like a lot of the rare, we do not have an FDA-approved treatment. For the colitis, it is often trial and error to figure out what works. And the treatment that we have for the lungs right now is a lung transplant. Because of the easy bruising that we have there have been families that have been mistaken for child abuse. Progression of symptoms can be varied. There is a need to be careful with various medicines that have blood thinners in it. Next slide. While this was all happening, something very cool started to happen. We started to establish the HPS network, and my mom started to have our very first conference at our house. The dining room was our conference room, and childcare was in my bedroom. This was the time where I met my first friends that had HPS, and I met the first groups of people within our community. Next slide. I remember being in my hospital bed, and a very cool thing happened that just broke the ice of everything else. I was sitting in my bed, and I saw my mom on the phone. It seemed like she was having a lengthy conversation, and I was very curious. She told us that we got news from the NIH. They called mentioning that they would see Mom and I in their clinics. Our trips began to the NIH for years, and I was 6 years old upon our first visit. I became the index case, with being the first case study of Hermanski Podlock syndrome there. Next slide. With being in the hospital so much, my family was trying to figure out ways for me to start adapting to this new way of life. One of the most vital lessons that my mother has always taught is to create your own happiness. My grandmother helped and created this magic bag. It would be filled with things that were wrapped. And every time I got an IV, a blood draw, to any hospital test that was challenging, I would pick out of this magic bag. I would open the gift and it would be a colorful comb. I had so many IVs in my life. The collection filled 5 pretzel jars full of combs. My mother used to say that they would be like my trophies for being such a strong and valuable player. Living with a chronic illness, I learned that distraction was helpful. With music, my parents wanted me to exercise my lungs. They brought me to a singing teacher to see if it was possible for me to start taking lessons. The first one we went to decided that my lungs weren't powerful enough, and that I would never be a singer. Mom and I left her house discouraged. Subsequently, had another teacher we knew from our church, and she offered to take me as her student. She has been teaching me to sing ever since. I love collaborating with her and singing. I was in a state championship for New York State in the women's chorus. I was in choruses at my college and sang as a cantor at my church. I wish that First Lady who told me I would never sing could hear me now. I also love taking pictures. With the technology that we have on our phone these days, I'm an amateur photographer. I have special love for making jewelry using wallpaper as beads for necklaces. I can't see well to string them, but I do it with feel. These hobbies keep me happy and sane. Next slide. Having a traumatic brain injury made learning hard for me. I have an executive functioning disorder and legal blindness, which made schooling difficult. It took me a long time, but felt proud that I was able to get my college degree. I have a degree in early childhood education, and I am now working on my certification for New York State. This took me 12 years, so I used to tell everybody that I took the scenic route through my education, and I loved it. Next slide. While all of this was going on, our organization, Hermanski Podlock Syndrome Network, kept on rolling. We were like the little engine that could. We would go to conventions and places where researchers and doctors were, and we would have a booth and serve chocolate chip and butter cookies to show them what our platelets look like and what normal platelets look like. It was always fun to watch them go by the booth and have some cookies with us. Next slide. Whenever I wasn't in class or studying, I would be working in the network. Being in the network is like being a second home to me. They are like my genetic family. It makes me feel good to work to try to find a cure. It is better than sitting around and worrying. If a cure is not found in my lifetime, I want to make sure that there is a treatment and cure for others. I learn a lot, and it teaches me to be a better advocate. Next slide. Look how big we have grown since our first conference at our house. A blessing of having HPS is meeting so many more faces within our community. We always say it is like a family reunion. Next slide. We have so much fun that we created a line of clothing to celebrate Rare. This was the jingle that we made, and it is fun. It is a fun song for this occasion.
Dare to be rare, no one else anywhere, to be proud to declare that you're you. Dare to be rare, to be someone who cares, to be someone who dares to be true. Dare to be rare. Dare to be rare. Dare to be rare, no one else anywhere, to be proud to declare that you're you. Dare to be rare, to be someone who cares, and be someone who dares to be true. Dare to be rare, no one else anywhere, to be proud to declare that you're you. Dare to be rare, to be someone who cares, and be someone who dares to be true. Dare to be rare.
Next slide. If there's one thing I have learned about living with a rare disorder is this saying: life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. I do not really want to miss a minute of dancing. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Next slide. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Hey, thank you so much, Ashley, for sharing your inspiring story. Your video was amazing. I loved it. Yay. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
So I'm very excited to announce that Assembly Member John McDonald from the 108th District has just joined us. Hi, Mr. McDonald. Assembly Member McDonald, would you like to say a few words and say hello?
Yes, Mary, how are you? It's great to be with you, all of you actually, and actually I just caught the end of your comments, which I sincerely appreciate. And you know, it's about living. It's about living life to our best, and at the same token, to remain committed to research, finding cures, finding ways to actually get through life, right? And sometimes we know that with some diseases, there is something within the grasp that we can strive for. In others, it's more about learning to share what those tips are, the tips and tricks of how do we navigate through this healthcare system that we struggle with at times, and what are the better quality of life indicators that we should be striving for. So it's a pleasure to join with you this evening. I'm sorry I'm late. I was actually had a busy day today. It's nice to be back, and as much as it's great in a way virtually that we can gather from different parts of the region or the state, in-person events are now back in full bloom, even before spring has sprung. So I was running to a couple dozen events and just finally got home for tonight's event. So thank you. And thanks to all of you for those that have shared their experiences and their stories, and those that will continue to do, because you're an inspiration to all of us. Look forward to tomorrow. We are going to be in session. We are back to live session in the chamber. I'm there every day, and we will be actually, I will be speaking on the floor on the resolution, recognizing Rare Disease Day throughout New York State. It's been an honor and privilege to carry that resolution for some time now, almost my full 10 years in the Assembly. And at the same token, we've seen great progress in some areas, and we know have much more to do in some others. So thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking and to come on and join with us tonight. Before the meeting officially started, we were just speaking about how much we miss coming onto the floor to celebrate the resolution. So thank you for still going ahead with that and supporting us.
Next year, you're off the hook. You're back in town next year.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're so excited. Okay, so next up, our speaker is Kristen Labatt. I'd like to invite Kristen to speak on her experiences and her journey with Rare. Kristen is a caregiver parent and executive director of a patient advocacy group. Kristen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm honored to be here today. I want to thank everyone for inviting us. And, you know, Rare Disease Day has a really special place in my heart. My journey with rare disease started back in August 2012 when my son Giovanni was born. And we didn't have a traditional journey to parenthood. So we were very excited when he came into our lives, but we could immediately tell that there was something just not quite right. He had immediately had difficulty eating, and 24 hours after discharge was readmitted back into the hospital and diagnosed with failure to thrive. And we also noticed these jerky-like movements that Giovanni was exhibiting. It almost looked like an exacerbated startle reflex.
At City Mattress. If you watch News and NBC, first off, I hope you get a sense of what's going on in our community. We're going to bring you the facts.
There we go. Thank you. So we brought our concerns to our pediatrician, who said that because we did have quite a traumatic birth experience with Giovanni, that it was likely an underdeveloped nervous system, and he would likely outgrow the symptoms that he was exhibiting. As time went on, we noticed that he was displaying extreme weakness in his left side of his body, and he had a pretty severe rotation in his neck, and he was ultimately diagnosed with torticollis, which led us to a physical therapist. And it was our physical therapist that started really raising some red flags and concerns regarding our son, that there was definitely something just not quite right, and there was something more going on than just torticollis. So in June of 2013, a few months before Giovanni turned a year old, we were referred to a local neurologist who said because of his birth that it was likely from a hypoxic episode, but you know, so we were classified as cerebral palsy, and said that we would just treat it symptomatically and continue with our therapies. Now, at this time, Giovanni was up to receiving 9 therapies a week in our home through physical therapy, speech, special education, and occupational therapy. And over that summer, after we saw the neurologist, he started having just a total regression in development. All of his babbling stopped. He wasn't crawling anymore. And we raised our concerns with the neurologist again, who decided to do an MRI. This MRI was on August 13th of 2013, and it's a day that we will never forget, as we received a phone call that afternoon after the MRI, and we were told that Giovanni had an ultra rare disorder of the central nervous system called porencephaly. Now, porencephaly is usually caused by an in utero stroke, and it causes a porencephalic cyst to form in the brain. And this porencephalic cyst is filled with cerebral spinal fluid, and it's surrounded by dead tissue. So while it still remains an active part of the brain, there's really nothing that can be done for the cyst. Now, here we are a week before his first birthday. We've gone through all of these motions to try to find treatment for our son. And now we receive this diagnosis of porencephaly. And I think, like any parent, the first thing you do is you go to Google and try to figure out, exactly what's going on. So, here we are reading things like delayed growth and development, hypotonia, spastic hemiplegia, seizures, hydrocephalus, spastic contractures, with the average life expectancy being 8 years. It was at this time that, we decided to start a Facebook page, because I knew other families had to be out there. And his Facebook page is called Giovanni's Journey, and it started to grow. And I started to slowly be contacted by people from all over the world that had the same diagnosis. Some families that were receiving the diagnosis before birth through ultrasound. And in March of 2014, I officially started the Cortical Malformation and Cephalic Disorder Foundation, better known as the CMCD Foundation. And we encompass 15 rare to ultra rare neurological and central nervous system based disorders. So, we advocate for our patients. We help guide them to centers of excellence for care. We work with researchers to increase awareness and education. And, a lot of people have asked me, well, what is it like living in the rare disease space with a child with a rare disease? And, I can best sum it up as a trip to an amusement park. You're immediately excited to go to the amusement park. I mean, the food, the rides, and you walk in and you smell the popcorn, and you can hear the carousel music in the background, and you can't help but be filled with joy and happiness. Well, then somebody comes up and they shuffle you to this other part of the park. And this part of the park is filled with enclosures, and you can't see what's inside. And all you know is that they're rides, and you have to ride all of them. Some of the rides are slow and bumpy and, manageable. But then you get on this ride, and it's like, it's in the dark. You can't see what's coming. You're being whipped from side to side, and you're going upside down, and you're just praying for your life, and you cannot wait until this ride ends. And once you're on a ride like that, you just anticipate all of the future rides are going to be the same. And that's what living in the rare disease space is like, is that you just anticipate the worst at all times. But despite that, you do try to live day by day, and, you never take anything for granted. I mean, Giovanni right now, he's a vibrant, loving, happy 9.5-year-old boy. So we have surpassed what we originally read of being 8 years old. And, the doctors don't know what his future is going to hold. His epilepsy right now is not very well under control. He walks with braces on his legs. He used to walk with a walker. He has his best friend is Rosalind, his seizure alert dog, and she lets us know when he's actively having a seizure, or actually she can alert anywhere from 40 minutes to 8 hours prior to a seizure. But I guess I want everyone to know that rare disease isn't something that you can ever anticipate happening. It's not something that you sign up for. And, it's definitely something that I would never have signed up for, although I wouldn't change a moment of it, if that makes sense. That might be hard to understand, but yeah, so that's our journey through rare disease. And I just want to thank everybody on this call for listening to our stories. Ashley, for sharing your story. Very, very courageous to do that. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you for sharing. If anyone has any questions for Kristen, please drop them in the chat. I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Samantha Darwak, who is a rare disease advocate. So yeah, take it.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. I wanted to thank Mary, Sophia, and Jessica for asking me to be a part of tonight's program. I really am honored, and Kristen and Ashley, listening to both of your stories, it gives me more reason to be a part of the rare disease community. I play a bit of a both personal and professional role in the rare disease community. Personally, my mother, who actually is on the call tonight, Stephanie, ever since I was a little girl, she would take me with her to her work events, and I would volunteer at a lot of nonprofit events with the American Cancer Society and the American Heart Association and things like that. And I started with my company, Kalari Communications Global. We are a consulting firm. And we work mainly in the pharmaceutical and the biotech space in the patient advocacy departments. So we don't work with any of their products, their medicines, but we work with the patient community on advocacy efforts, education programs, and things of that nature. So I started with Kalari in Florida, and I was home visiting because there was actually a hurricane warning. And so I came home for it. And there was a Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. They had a Great Strides event. So I went with my mom to volunteer. 5 a.m. in the morning, we helped set up for the event. And that really is what got me started in the rare disease space. I ended up relocating home to New York State to start working up here. And ever since then, most of my projects have been in the rare disease community. For advocacy efforts, I have worked with Mary in the past on Rare Disease Day, helping getting secured resolutions with Assemblymember John McDonald. And it has been wonderful. It's been rewarding to get to know patients, caregivers. The community as a whole is so passionate. From my professional standpoint, what I do now, I work a lot in the newborn screening space. My clients some of them are pharmaceutical companies, and we pull together a lot of patients and caregivers from the community in certain therapeutic areas, and we listen to them. We get their feedback from wonderful people like you, and it just is such a fulfilling job. And even if it wasn't my profession, I would do it on a personal level. So that really is about me and what I do. And we've been also a part of the rare disease advisory councils. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me. And I'm really honored to be here tonight. So thank you guys for having me speak.
Thank you so much. So I believe we're at the end of our agenda. I do want to say a couple of things. One, I want to thank you all for attending. And two, I want to thank all of our speakers for being so vulnerable, such beautiful stories. I want to thank John McDonald for joining, and the message from Senator Rivera as well. I know we have a couple of things to share quickly. One, we're not really ending this, we're doing a happy hour afterwards. So if you guys have any questions for our speakers, or if you'd like to chit chat and network, please stay on. I believe that we have this time booked until 7:30. And another thing is that tomorrow is NORD's official Rare Disease Day event, which will be happening at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. And this event will have a couple of great guest speakers, and it's going to be another place to connect and chat with other rare disease community members. I will drop the registration link in the chat so you guys can register for that event tomorrow. Oh, and then here's a screen. Thank you to all of our sponsors. And is that everything? Did I get everything? I think great. So I'll drop that link in for tomorrow's event. And yeah, thanks again, everyone, for coming.
Thank you to all of you that could come tonight. For those of you who can stay on, we are so happy to have you. Very good. Okay.
It's great to be here with you guys.
Thanks, Ashley. Jessica has dropped the link for tomorrow in the chat. You can also find it on NORD's website. I love seeing those of you who are able to wear zebra stripes, showing your stripes today. Thank you so much. It's so exciting. Also, we have hashtag show your stripes and hashtag rare disease day. Please post your pics and share on social media. A little bit of housekeeping for our chat time. You are under no obligation to stay on until 7:30. Please come and go during this time as you please. You're also under no obligation to speak or share. You can just listen in. Please feel free to ask questions to our speakers or to each other. And please feel free, if you want to put your contact information and Rare connection